It's the grandson of Right Thought. Welcome to the School of Marvelous Light, Little Flock. Turn to Genesis chapter 14. The book of Genesis chapter 14. And what we're going to be talking today about is, of course, the same thing we always talk about, right? This particular message is going to be about faith and about what takes place before the fruition of the promises that you have been given come to pass. That in-between time, what is going to take place between once you learn the truth and learn what to do, and the fruits of that truth that you have learned begin to manifest. In other words, your life has been a struggle. It has been hard. It has been painful. It has been sad. As he said, you shall sow in tears, but you shall reap in joy and in gladness. So you go through a period of sorrow, pain, struggle, and strife. After learning the truth, you go through this, you see? So that you can be prepared to receive the blessedness to come along with it, so that you can be a true steward or a good steward over what you are given. You see? Genesis chapter 14. So what takes place here is the man we all know as Abraham, name is still Abram at this time. You see what I mean, little flock? Now we know that the promise he was given was Isaac, the son of promise. And that was the promise that he, with faith and patience, waited for and longed for until it came. You see? But in between that promise coming, tests came. One of them we know was when Sarah said, well, maybe Abba meant Hagar. Maybe he meant that I won't have a child, but I'll have a child through Hagar. Maybe that's what he meant. You see how the first thing you try is always carnal? And the first thing you try always ends up in a way you didn't want it to be? Don't you see that, little flock? I'm putting my finger on this and holding it there so that you can see it before we move forward. It would be well that all the members of the little flock absorb this into their being, this understanding that I'm describing. That when you're trying to build a life for yourself, you're trying to seek good for yourself or trying to find the right way to go for yourself. In that process, you're going to try something that's not going to work, but it's going to seem to the logical mind to make sense, to the carnal mind, see, to the flesh mind. It's going to seem to make perfect sense when you do it. But after it's done, the fruit is death. In other words, what it produces is a negative feeling in you, not positive. It doesn't bring life. And we see that with Ishmael. You see that, little flock? So then she turns around and has to end up saying, cast the bondwoman out and her child. So then this is the two covenants that we read about in the other video I have posted. Hagar is Sinai. Sarah is Zion. They are two covenants, the Bible says. So when you see Israel going through these two covenants, they're doing the same thing Sarah did when she said, here, take Hagar. Maybe that's what God meant about, I promise you this. Maybe this is what he meant. So then try that. And then we see the results of it. Kick that woman and that child out of here. She won't be heir with my child. Well, if you knew you were going to have that child, Sarah, then why did you say do it with Hagar? Because this is a matter of faith. The carnal mind is struggling against the spiritual mind. They're fighting for the same promise. They're saying, how can it come to pass? The how is God's. The how is Abba's. But until you know that, you will struggle to make the how come to pass on your own. And so how do you do something? With the works of your hands. With the carnal mind, in other words. And so that's what Sarah did. But we saw the fruit of it. Because the promise was that Sarah would have a son. Not Hagar, not anybody else. The promise was unto Sarah. You see that there? And so when she had her son, the first had to make way for the new. He had to be cast out. So the first covenant had to be cast out in place of the new. You see that? And that's what we're going to read about today, is about this implementation of the new. You see, like I said, his name is still Abram, where we're going to read here. It hasn't been changed yet. You see? But let's see what happens. Let's see what takes place here in Genesis 14. Now, there's a war taking place, and there are several kings that have come together to fight a war. And in the midst of this war, Sodom and Gomorrah and their kings had to get involved in this war. Well, you guys know who lives in Sodom and Gomorrah. We read it on the other video the other day. That would be Lot. Abraham's nephew. Now watch what happens here. Watch what Abram does and watch what it calls Lot in relation to Abram during this scenario that we're going to read about. So we're going to jump down to verse 10. Now that I've given you a preface or summarized what is going on here. Several kings have come together to fight. Matter of fact, this war is called the War of Kings. That's one of the names of it. Okay? And the vale of Siddim was full of slime pits. Vale is lowland. So in the lowland down there was a bunch of slime pits, like swamp, you see? And the kings of Sodom and Gomorrah fled and fell there in the slime pits. You see that today, little flock? And they remained fled to the mountain. And they that remained, the ones that were living, that ran, they ran to the mountains, you see? So some ran to the lowland and died, and the others ran to the mountain. You notice that, little flock? You notice that? And they took all the goods of Sodom and Gomorrah. They took everything. And all their victuals, and went their way. Victuals are what you eat. Took all their food, all their goods, you see? And went their way. And they took Lot. Lot means covering or envelop. The covering of brotherly love. You see it? That's what Lot represents. The covering of brotherly love. Now let's prove that. We already did on the last video, but we're going to further prove it to really get it down inside of you so that you can build your faith off of this. You see? So they took Lot, Abraham's brother's son. Y'all understand that? His nephew, who dwelt in Sodom, and his goods, and departed. They took Lot, his goods, because he dwelt in Sodom, like I told you, and they took him and went on their way. You see? Watch this here. Verse 13. And there came one that had escaped and told Abram the Hebrew, see that there, little flock? For he dwelt in the plain. See that there, little flock? What did I tell you plain means? Fair and equal place. See? So Abraham is a fair, just, upright, equal man. That's what it means when it says he dwells in the plain. You see? So he's a fair, equal man who lives by brotherly love, loving his neighbor as himself. So he keeps a higher commandment than the old covenant. You see? And we're going to prove that by what happens after he hears this news. You see? After he hears this news, he's going to do something. Okay? So the plain of Mamre, the Amorite, brother of Eshcol, and brother of Aner, and these were confederate with Abram. See that? They were his friends, his associates, his allies. You see that today? They were his allies. And when Abram heard that his brother was taken captive, what did it call him there? His brother. See what I'm saying to you, little flock? Abraham took his brother with him, even though it was his brother's son. Abraham considered his brother's son to be his brother. So he took care of him and protected him because he is his brother's keeper, which fulfills the royal law that we had from the beginning that Cain broke. So then we had to learn, thou shalt not kill. You see, after the murder of a brother took place, I have to give you something that you can understand. Don't kill, don't steal, don't commit adultery, don't harm your brother. But in the beginning, it was not so. Adam and Eve told them to love one another. What do you think Adam and Eve told Cain and Abel before Cain killed Abel? To hate one another, to envy one another, to lust after each other's goods and to covet, to commit adultery with each other's wives? Is that what you guys think they were told? Those things didn't exist. As Yahushua said, from the beginning, it was not so. But because of the hardness of Cain's heart and killing his son, they had to get a new commandment, which was don't kill. You see it there, little flock of laters. But from the beginning, it was love your brother. That's why Abel is the one teaching you the original law, which was to love. Oh boy, oh boy. Let's get into it. Let's continue. All right. And when Abram heard that his brother, see that, was taken captive, he armed his trained servants, born in his own house, 318, and pursued them unto Dan. So they chased after those guys that took Lot and his goods, and they chased them all the way to a place called Dan. Why Dan? Because Dan means judge. It means to judge. So there's a judgment taking place, you see, because there's going to be a battle. As we saw, Abraham got his men together, got their armor and weapons, and took off after and chased after them. So there's going to be a battle. Well, Abba judges all battles. He is going to decide who's going to win this battle. Abram at this time is fighting for brotherly love. All those other guys are fighting to get. I don't know if you guys can hear the grandson and what he's been saying to you guys these last few weeks especially. It's about getting. Why would you take goods and victuals if you don't want nothing? Why would you take that then? Now, what is Abraham coming to take? His brother back. So they're fighting for two different reasons. So let's see how God judges here. Since they're fighting in a place, since they were pursued to a place named to judge, you see, which is Dan. All right. And he divided himself against them, he and his servants, by night. You hear that? And smote them and pursued them unto Habah. What does Habah mean? So they started in Dan at night, and he attacked them and started to whooping on their ass, and they took off running, and then they ran to a place named Habah. Now let's see if this is connected to Dan in any way. Dan means to judge. Habah means guilty. Oh my goodness gracious, are you guys thinking that this is some kind of fluke or joke that this is written this way? Do you really think so? And do you see how it lines up perfectly to what everything the grandson has been telling you guys about? So now, judge, guilty. They're guilty of breaking the commandment. See that? But Abraham keeping the commandment. So now let's see who wins. So they chased them to a place called guilty. See? They started in judgment and they pursued them to a place called guilty. So they were proven to be guilty of the crime. So let's see what Abraham does, which is on the left hand of Damascus, verse 16. And he brought back all the goods and also brought again his brother Lot and his goods and the women also and the people. So they took the people, the goods, the victuals and everything. And Abraham went back there and got it all back. You see that there? He got it all back. So then what was the judgment, guys? Abraham won. He prevailed because he fought for the right reason. Those other guys fought to get. So in this whole wide world we're living in, the children of Abraham fight for brotherly love, while the other people out there and the other kings and other exalted people and mighty people of the land fight to get gain at the expense of even taking brothers captive, at the expense of even taking women captive, at the expense of killing people. They don't give a damn what they got to do to get. Isn't that what's going on in the world today? There are two types of nations. That's that simple. See? All right, now, we said what happened. Abraham went and recovered his brother and all his goods. That's why he went, because he heard his brother was taken. You see that there? Now watch this here. And the king of Sodom went out to meet him. Sodom means burnt, by the way. It means burnt up. See that there? So what happened to Sodom and Gomorrah? See how God is just not joking? You see, the place means burnt. With volcanic activity. That means like lava and molten lava and shit didn't burn that place up. Well, what did it say like it was coming down from the sky? Fire and brimstone. So what do you guys think comes down when a volcano erupts? But you guys don't think that could happen where you are. Well, do you have volcanoes around where you are? Then it can happen. You see that there, little flop? Just like it happened in Sodom and Gomorrah. Just as in the days of Lot, so shall it be in the coming of the Son of Man. Why would it mention the guy we're just talking about? Just as in the days of Lot, the covering. People were going about getting goods, stealing women, killing, raping, pillaging, and plundering. But there was one man who stood by to keep the commandments of God that he had got from the beginning, which was to love your brother. And so he did. He protected him. He kept him. You see, the opposite of what Cain said, am I my brother's keeper? That means protector. Well, Abraham proved that he was. See that there, little flock? Now, when he proved that he did, let's see if God confirms that he did what was pleasing to him by loving his brother, because that's what I keep telling you guys to do. Let's see. And the king of Sodom went out to meet him after his return from the slaughter of Chedorlaomer, Okay, y'all see that name? Chedorlaomer. All right. And of the kings that were with him at the valley of Shaveh. You see that? Which is in the king's dale. Wait for my page to load up, y'all. Hold on. Give me a minute. All right. Y'all see that? Now watch this here. And Malachizedek. Scroll back in my videos a couple days. You're going to see a video and it's going to have one word as the title. And the title is going to be Malachizedek. Why does he show up here? Because he is the high priest of the new covenant. That's why. Because there are two. Like I told you, Abraham by faith kept the new covenant. Even though he lived in a world of many idolaters, many people who thought there were other things to do to please the Father. He kept the original covenant. So then he was confirmed that he kept the original covenant by what, little flock? What did he do? Loving his brother. And when he did, Abba sent him the high priest of he sent him the high priest Melchizedek to confirm he had done it. You see? Let's see. And Melchizedek, king of Salem, peace. What does loving your brother create? Okay then, little flock. Okay then. Watch this here. He brought forth bread and wine. You see that, little flock? He brought forth bread and wine, and he was the priest of the Most High love. See it? See it? So now, if there are not two covenants, guys, then how is he a priest if he does not come from the Levitical order? How is he a priest? And why is he blessing Abraham? What did Abraham do to receive this blessing? What did he do to earn it? What did he do to get it? I told you what he did. And Melchizedek, king of Salem, brought forth bread and wine, and he was the priest of the Most High El. And he blessed him and said, Blessed be Abram, the Most High of the Most High El, possessor of heaven and earth. See that there, little flock? The possessor of heaven and earth. The Most High El. And blessed be the Most High El, which hath delivered thine enemies into thine hand. And he gave him tithes of all. So Abraham gave Melchizedek tithes of what he had gotten, of everything he had gotten. And he received the blessing from Melchizedek because he kept the new covenant, which is the original covenant. You see it there, little flock. Abraham is way before Jacob and his sons, before Levi was ever even born. Guys, so what commandments is Abraham keeping if Levi isn't born yet? And Moses then therefore has not been born yet, and therefore has not gone up to the mountain yet, has not got the commandments yet to come and present them to the children of Israel yet. So what was Abraham doing? And why was there already a priest if Levi hadn't been born yet? Huh? Yeah. That's what I'm saying to you niggas today. You hear that there? And the king of Sodom said unto Abram, Give me the persons, watch this, and take the goods to thyself. And Abram said to the king of Sodom, I have lifted up mine hand unto I am the Most High love, the possessor of heaven and earth, that I will not take from a thread, even a shoe latchet, and that I will not take anything that is yours, lest thou should say, I have made Abram rich, save only that which the young men have eaten, and the portion of the men which went with me, Aner, Eshcol, and Mamre. Let them take their portion. So was it about getting goods, that thing that Abraham did? Is that why he went off to war and fight, guys? Is to get gain? So why do you get up every day and go to war? To love your brother or to get gain? What do you think the grandson of Right Thought gets up every day to do? To go get gain, or to do exactly what I'm doing right now, which is what I do every day that Albert allows me to do? What do you say? I know what you gotta say. You see that? That's how I prove to you what order I am from. Now, if I were from the other order, then you would hear me say things that have to do with that order, but you don't. You actually hear me telling you to keep Melchizedek order, which is love God with all your heart, your soul, and your mind, and love your neighbor as yourself. then you'll be the children of Abraham, because you did as Abraham did. What did Yahushua say? How do you say you're Abraham's children, but yet you don't do what Abraham do? See, you don't love your neighbor as yourself. So how in the hell do you say you're Abraham's children? That would be like your dad. Your dad has a certain type of characteristics that he's known for in the world, has a reputation. Let's say he's a upstanding guy. He's righteous. He's right thinking. He's fair and equal. Well, when he has a son, people are going to assume that his son is like him. And if he's not like his dad, they're going to wonder why and how. How the hell aren't you like your dad? If he's fair and righteous, how come you're wicked? Yes, because you were rebellious and didn't listen to your dad. That's the only other explanation. You see there, little flockulators? So he didn't do it for that. He said, let them take their portion, but I don't want anything, because then you're going to say, you made me rich. So no, I don't want that. I got what I came for, which was the brother. Now, notice, like I said, before I end this message, that he was called Abram at this time. So see, he had not had his name changed yet or anything. So this is between the time of getting the promise fulfilled and when he was told it. You see what I'm saying? So he had to fight. As we see, there are battles you're going to have to fight. And in the midst of these battles, little flock, there are mortars going off. Like I said, there are IEDs exploding unexpectedly. There are snipers out there shooting unexpectedly and all kinds of things going on in the battlefield. And sometime when an explosion goes off, you get through the air and knocked down. And when that happens, you get down on yourself as if there's no way you should have been knocked through the air like that. This is war, baby. That kind of shit happened. You see that? You're going to get knocked down. You're going to get the wind knocked out of you. Just because you have your helmet on your head doesn't mean somebody's not going to take a big ass hammer and crack you on top of your head to see. And though you may not die from the blow, because you won't die from it, you will still might get concussed for a second. You might get your stars and birds going around your shit for a second, but you're not dead. And that feeling will wear off, and then you'll get back in the fight. So when that feeling wears off and you get back in the fight, don't look back and turn into a pillar of salt, thinking about why you got hit in the head. Because it's war. That should be your answer every time. Because it's war. I had all my armor on, so I shouldn't have ever got knocked down. Why? It's part of the fighting. It's part of fighting, brother. A tank shoots a big-ass round into the building you're in, and it explodes. You're going to shake and fall down. It don't mean nothing. Just get back up. But you see, a lot of the members of the little flock, in the time waiting for the manifestation, they get weary because they've been knocked down. Their shield flew off their hand when they were blocking something. It flew off their hand, and they had to go back and get it, and that was tedious. They got knocked down and fell off the side of the mountain, so they rolled down and hit rocks and got busted up on the way down and fell down to the bottom that they had been climbing. They were knocked off by something, pulled them off. An enemy knocked them off and they fell. And they looked around for their sword at the bottom because they dropped it when they fell. So they had to look for it and pick it back up and make sure their armor was back on and then get back in the fight, guys. But if you sit there going, if I had all my armor and everything on, I should have never gotten knocked down. Why? Why not? What is affliction? What is adversity? If adversity is not something to be overcome, the thing we hate is the thing to overcome, but we love the feeling of overcoming. So then fuck the thing you have to overcome and focus on the overcoming and stay in the end of that, because that's how you win. If you get knocked down, then you focus on being knocked down, you're not in the end. Can you hear that wisdom? If you are already victorious, then you just happen to get knocked down on the path to victory. It doesn't mean you got knocked down and it kept you from victory, because you're already victorious. So then this is just a part of my victory. It made the story better that I was knocked down and thought to be out of the fight. That made people cheer more when I got back up and got back in the fight and won. Isn't that the way it goes, little flock? They call that a war. They don't call a boxing match a war where one guy goes in there, he's untouched, he beats the other guy to a pulp, and he never gets touched but one punch. That's not a war. A war is when both guys are slugging back and forth. They've both been hurt. They've both had to overcome much adversity. That's got people so caught up in it, and they love that way more than a one-sided dominant victory. That's cool every now and again, but every now and again you want to see a war, because that makes you respect that fighter more and say, look what he overcame. Look how beautiful this is what he did. Look how much heart he showed in this fight that he overcame. That's because he stayed in the end. And that's the greatest fighter because that means that he will overcome. So if you stack up something very huge in front of him, his story will be the greatest because he will overcome that thing regardless. He already has. So your hatred for him to be an overcomer will cause you to put things in his path. We'll put him there so we can have a good war to watch and a good story to tell of how we have overcome. And I'm right there with you, brothers and sisters. And I got your back. And if you ever need a shoulder to cry on, a friend to talk to, a brother to succor how you feel, just reach out to the grandson of Right Thought. And I will make that time for you. I will sacrifice my life for what you are going through. And don't think it's strange when I do it the way that I do it. Because I search after what I search after by faith. So there's no evidence that I'm praying for you when I pray. The evidence is when you get your answer. That's the evidence that I've prayed for you. But it requires you to have faith. That's the ingredient. That's the key. Just as Yahushua in his own hometown could not do many miracles in Why Little Flock? Because they lacked faith. So he could only do a few things there. But so it is here with us, Little Flock. If you have faith, then you can move mountains. And those mountains are the hindrances that are trying to impede you from getting to where you want to get to, which is the highest peak. You see there, Little Flock? So let us support one another in brotherly love so that we fulfill the commandment and that Malachizedek will come to us and bless us. You see it, Little Flock? Y'all be blessed today. Shalom, Mr. Allah.